Hi, welcome to the Conversation Shop with Sedrick Page. I'm here today with my very, very special guest, Mr. Curt Singleton, entrepreneur, businessman. Today, we're going to be discussing Black America 2021. And we're going to start the conversation off talking about what does Black Lives Matter, BLM, mean to you? Curt, welcome to the show.
How you doing, Sid? A pleasure to be here. I thank you for having me on, and I'm very excited to give my opinions about some things. I hope that can help some people, in which that's what I think that you're here to do, and hopefully they can grasp what we're doing here. So it's my pleasure to be here.
Well, I appreciate you. Before we dive into the conversation, I always like to give my guests an opportunity. Just tell my audience a little bit about yourself, who you are, what made you want to have this conversation.
Well, I'm Curt Singleton. I have a few businesses in real estate at this moment. I'm also a certified crane operator, certified in safety, plants, oil and gas. Also in investments. I've been doing some investments and in management. So this pretty much is my genre of the things that I'm doing today. And I'm just in hopes that some of this can shed light as we talk about Black Lives Matter, because everything starts from a person's thinking. And if you have, the wrong thinking, then you're going to have the wrong actions. So that's where I'm at.
Well, let's dive right into the conversation. One of the reasons I wanted to start with talking about what does Black Lives Matter mean to you? Number one, out in the community, on the news, we see a lot of people that react or respond to Black Lives Matter in positive ways, but also negative ways. So first, I'll start by giving you my opinion of Black Lives Matter, because from my perspective, when you say Black Lives Matter, it should matter when there's Black on Black crime, when we're killing each other, the youth, but it also should matter when, the cops are abusing and killing us. So it encompasses everything. So what I feel often is that when I look out into the world and I look at the news and I see what's going on in our communities, I tend to get upset. I have a motto where I say, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and talks like a duck, it's a duck. So what I mean by that is, when we are killing each other, I don't see Black Lives Matter. I don't see any marches. I don't see any community outrage. I don't see anyone talking about this. Only when we see, the police killing us is when, quote unquote, Black Lives Matter. So I want to start by hopefully getting your perspective on that and your opinion on my observation. Because quite frankly, sometimes I think it's bullshit. I mean, BS, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I understand. Basically, you're correct. The thing that happens is with the Black Lives Matter thing is that people can get more of exposure or get more of a shine or whatever you want to exposure as far as being seen when it's police being involved. When it's more of the Black on Black crime, you have more people that comes out, and the main thing about it is, even if when they talk about it, it's going to be brushed under the rug. So it's not going to be as effective because it's Black on Black. But you're most definitely correct that this is where they need to really direct things, because, again, Cedric, the thing about it is it's all about a person's thinking. So at the end of the day, when you think about Black Lives Matter, it has to have a whole genre of thought process.
Yes.
From prisons, from education, from when you're talking about the fathers that are absent in the kids' lives that are Black, but you also have to look at the unification is how I look at it when I think of being Black Lives Matter. It has to be more of a unification all around the board, not just the police brutality, but all of these other aspects that affect us as a whole. So that's where, the problem comes in, because, you get these outlets, and which has been good because it got a little exposure from the police thing. But I also have to say, in some of these instances, we have these people that end up, doing things because they get this Black Lives Matter, and now they want to act all up in front of the police, and now it turns violent. Right. Instead of it should be, Blacks should be thinking. Use your brain. Think. And that's how that should be in my aspect of it, is learn to think.
I agree with you totally. And just to add on that, I want to add Black Lives Matter in healthcare, Black Lives Matter socioeconomically as well. We have to start by empowering ourselves in terms of what we value, right? So do we value, to me, we've lost the value of education. We've lost the value of having a skill. For instance, with you being a crane operator and having your own business, that's a skill that someone can never take from you. You can purchase your own crane. You can get independent contractors to go out and drive that. You have a skill set that someone can never take from you, where what gives you which empowers you financially to be able to take care of yourself, where you don't have to go depend on someone else to hire you or to earn money. So that's just one example. The other example, I say, and I'll just be bluntly, we look like hypocrites when we say Black Lives Matter, right? Only when George Floyd, police kneeling on him, killing him, which was a travesty, right? But let's talk about the doctor who died in Cleveland. If I'm not mistaken, it was Cleveland. She was in the hospital. She died from COVID. And she listed out, she created a video diary where she was talking about all the negatives and the discrimination that she was experiencing through healthcare that led to her demise. But you don't see Black Lives Matter going out protesting that. You don't see people on television talking about that. You don't see marches in the street where people are talking about that. I'll bring one closer. We are aware of some family members, people in the community, young people that are caught up in violence, right? That are being killed. Our young people are killing each other at a ridiculous rate. You look at rap artists. I mean, come on, there's a man running in the middle of the highway, letting it go. We have never seen that, right? You have FBG Duck, a rapper being killed on Michigan Avenue. You've never seen that. So that's a sign that it's getting out of hand. So when we ask the world to pay attention to us, right? We ask the world to believe that Black Lives Matter empower us, right? But we don't stand up. But the question you'll hear Caucasian Americans, Mexican Americans, Hispanic Americans say is, well, where's Black Lives Matter when you're killing each other? It doesn't make sense. So it's a disconnect. So those are the things that make me really, really angry. And quite frankly, it makes me want to stick the middle finger up to Black Lives Matter and call them hypocrites, because it seems very political to me. Don't play with my lives. Don't play with my lives. Don't play with the lives of the people that look like me, and don't sway the attention from people who are truly trying to make change. So I'll give you an opportunity to address it. We have about 4 minutes. You take those 4 minutes and explore that for me. Give me your opinion.
Yeah, you're correct. The violence is so very high. It's so divided, Sedrick. That's the problem, the division. You have jealousy. Like you say, the medical field, you have these people who's going out, and, we have to support those type of people, because even in my line of work, man, I've been on many jobs where I was the only Black there. So I had to think. You have to think in certain situations instead of reacting. It's the part of not thinking and reacting that causes so many things, because what happens, you have all these people that want to be tough. Everybody want to be tough. Everybody want to tote a gun. And this is how they're fighting. Like back in the day, you could have a fist fight. Then later on, you and that person may end up being the best of friends.
Exactly.
So today, we really have to, when you think of Black Lives Matter, again, when I spoke on it, it's a whole big genre of everything. Let's support people who are in, high educational places, who are in very low minority jobs, and they're having to fight way more than just that job. They're having to fight all of the things that's involved, the people that still have envy, hate, or whatever, how they truly feel. And that's the fight that I think that we really need to win, and we can start gaining ground, but we have to come together as Blacks as a whole in order to say that Black lives really matter. And we have to look at every genre, every step, and eliminate envy and jealousy as much as we can in order to say, hey, we're really unified, because only unified people can gain ground. That's just how it goes. The more you have in numbers that are on the same page, you will most definitely be able to gain something. But it's so hard to get a bunch of people on the same page, Sedrick. And that's where everything goes wrong, because somebody wants this person place and somebody, but once they learn how to understand each one of us have a role. And once we learn how to play our role and come together in playing those roles, everything will get better. That's just my belief.
I agree with you totally. Well, Kirk, when we come back from the break, we're going to elaborate on that a little bit. We're going to finish our conversation on Black Lives Matter, but we're going to dive right into some solutions, unification. How do we become unified? What does being unified actually means? Okay?
Exactly.
Guys, we'll be right back on The Conversation Show. Hi, guys. Welcome back to The Conversation Shop. I'm here with my very special guest, Mr. Curt Singleton, businessman, entrepreneur. On the first segment, we were discussing Black Lives Matter. What does that mean to you? We were having a very interesting conversation about that, and we ended with talking about unification, unifying, our community being unified. And I want to dive right back into that conversation with you, Curt. From my perspective, when I look out into other communities, right, I see the Hispanic community or the Latin community, right, white, Black, Puerto Rican, whatever you call that Hispanic, they are together. They may seem separate, and have separate things that are important to them, but you mess with one, all of them coming together. You go into communities and talk about economics, they shop at their own grocery stores. They have their own banks. They have their own tax preparers. Their money flows within their community and in turn builds wealth within their community, right? You look at Africa, from Africa, the same thing. They invest in their communities, right? They support their communities. You look at Hmongs and Asians, they support their own communities. But when you look at African-American communities, and I'm just being blunt, when we talk about unification, we don't see those same dollars being rotated and spent in the same way. What we hear is, oh, Curt thinks he's this, he's that. The fish he makes over there, he doesn't use cornmeal, he uses batter. So we don't want to go there, right? You hear all these crab, I call it crab in the barrel type of things, instead of breathing life into each other. And not saying all the way across the board, but instead of breathing life into each other, we breathe death into each other. We rather go across the street to somebody that doesn't want us in the store, doesn't want us in the business, and spend our money at a place where we're unwanted instead of spending our cash in places where we are wanted and where we are valued. As an entrepreneur, who's invested in products and different things in real estate, the support of your community, means something to you, right? But often again, you don't see that support So let's talk about, I want you to talk about how we become unified in this and relate that unification back to the Black Lives Matter movement.
Well, in my opinion, Cedric, to be honest, bringing unification, it has to start with parents. It has to start with people of who has some type of authority with the youth. And the reason that I'm saying that is, see, nowadays it's a little different because, back in the day, the lady down the street could tell us what to do. And before we make it home, she didn't call mama and told, look, I done gave him one whipping. You might get 2 or 3 whippings, and it was fine then.
Exactly. It's called the village.
There you go. But what has happened in schools, now they have taken so much authority. You're talking about children that come home and actually tell their parents that they can call CPS on them. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now here you go with this problem where the major problem starts here. Now the kids have been given power. Now, if they don't like what their parents are doing now, mind you, the parents are the ones putting the roof over their head, feeding them, clothing them, and everything. So now you have implemented this to let these people, put in your children's head that they have power at home. Don't get me wrong. I understand some may go the wrong route with their kids, but as a whole, Sedrick, and I want them to really hear this. That same judge that is telling you that you can't chastise your child will be the same judge to give him or her a life sentence when they do something wrong. So when that unified come in, again, it comes back to being smart nowadays. You have to be able to think. You have to be able to come up with proper thoughts in your mind to understand what is needed to beat the odds, to beat these things that are up against us. Because once so many things are put up against you, you have to start thinking. Because when the stress, the frustration, and all this, you start reacting, okay, you're gonna get shot, you're gonna get killed, you're gonna be getting locked up, you're gonna do all of these type of things, which will cause all type of uproar and problems. And the only way that you can become unified is you have to reach the minds of these young people that feel that they can't be told nothing, because it has been loss of respect. Sedrick, you got a loss of respect of the man in these homes now. You have these women that, they have no appreciation for the man. They have no respect for him because they're making a little money now. And, all of these reality TVs, which is going into their minds,
right?
What they're feeling, that this is how things should go, because it's a brainwash. Now, all of these things that's going in the house, they're wanting it to look perfect to the world. But you have to speak the truth. Listen, my household is not the best. We have to work on it. We have bad days. We have good days. We have arguments. But we work through it. And these are ways to teach people when you are going through something, and to let people know that everybody is going through something. It's about how you deal with it. That's what it's about. And once people begin to understand that part and can kind of come together a little bit, and which is going to be hard, because it's such a jealous, envy age right now. And in order to get to that part, man, it's going to take a bunch of men used to, kind of speak in all aspects. Because if I could get a group of people that at least have some respect for me, and you could get a group of people that have some respect for you, and we can bring them together, then we can make a little movement, because you got your group that respects you. I got my group that respects me, and they see that we've came together, and now we can learn how to kind of try to bring them together. Because now you have some respect there between us two. And we have at least a few following of people that respects us. because that's the biggest thing right now, Sedrick. I'm telling you, nobody respects nobody. People are just hateful and jealous, and they don't want to see you with these things. But it takes men like me and you, Sedrick, who have genuine roots, genuine hearts, and it doesn't take a multitude, but if there are enough me and you with enough people that can unify us and have those few that we have that respect us, we can start unifying right there. I just truly believe that part.
I agree with you totally again. Let's elaborate. Let's talk about that a little bit. My comment on that is, in terms of, the disrespect in the household with the ladies here not respecting fathers. And they don't understand that they're teaching their children not to respect men and people that look like them. So you and I both know that if you don't respect your father, your brother, your uncle, then you're not going to respect the other person in the street. They mean absolutely nothing to you. So we're elaborating that Black lives don't matter in the Black community to a lot of the young kids, to be honest with you, right? So what I always like to talk about is we have to go back, right? Because in the olden days, you had Black matriarchs, Black mothers in the family, because we were dealing with overt racism, right? Overt. So they understood what their man had to navigate. He was worried about losing his life, trying to go out and provide for his family, but he did whatever he could do, right? And what they don't tell you is prior to if I'm not mistaken, 69, we had fathers and mothers in the same household. So we have to look at what did the government do, right? What was the plan to tear down the African-American family? Because that was something that was done purposefully, right? So let's take AFDC welfare, right? You pass laws that tell you your man can't be in the household if you're going to get food and get sustenance to take care of your family. But here's what was lost. You had the same father who couldn't live in the household, who would still come over to the house and spend the night. Something happened. Boy, I'm going to call your daddy to come over here and whoop your butt. You better act right. You understand? It's a misconception to say that those Black men were not a part of their children's lives. And those women respected those Black men or those men because they understood the societal barriers that were limiting him, right? Let's fast forward to now. You have women who have been blessed because we have to prepare the way, each one teach one, prepare the way for the other. So now when I look out into the community and I see the young Black woman who's been raised, forget your man, you don't need a man, take care of yourself, learn about the man, right? And then you have these young men, right, who are violent. But look at it from this perspective. When you've been raised by women, you become emotional. You start to act like a woman, right? But when you don't have anybody that looks like you, you see all of these. Remember what you said, we have to think, right? But we're raising men to be emotional. So they go out and they respond to things in an emotional manner. And when they respond to things in an emotional manner, they make mistakes, right? So again, we have to look underneath the surface and try to understand where this is coming from, right? And then you look into the schools, because I say schools shouldn't have all that social work, police in schools, all that should be out of there, right? Because what they're teaching your child is your parents don't have the power, right? So the courts are taking the power away from the parents to protect their kids. But if we're smart and we raise our kids correctly, we take that power away. Right before we go into the next segment, I'm going to say to you, I think COVID was the best thing that ever happened to Black families when it came to education. And I'm going to tell you why. Because we stopped white supremacy, racism is reinforced through education, television, the things that we see. Now, instead of complaining, we have an opportunity to educate our kids ourselves, to get them to read books, to teach them about the lies that exist out here in the world, and to educate them on truth. You know, you're a father, you know, I'm a father, you know what I'm saying? Uncle, I should say. You're an uncle. You have family members that mean the world to you. I'm a father on my end right now, and it's important to me to empower my kids, right? But in order to empower them, I have to teach them where they come from, right? What happens is often my son will tell me, Dad, racism doesn't exist anymore, right? But it's my responsibility. It used to throw me. I'd be like, boy, you want to make me knock you out? What are you talking about? You understand what I'm saying? But it made me take a step back, and I had to try to look at the world through his lens. And on the next segment, when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about this disconnect and relate it back to Black Lives Matter again. Guys, we'll be right back on The Conversation Shop. Hi, guys. Welcome back to The Conversation Shop. Again, I'm here with my very special guest, Curt Singleton, and we're going to dive right back into this conversation about families and Black Lives Matter. On the last segment, I ended the segment laying out, these kids don't have respect. They don't value their parents. They don't value themselves. And we talked about some of the quote unquote causes or things that support or empower these kids to think this way. On the last segment, I talked about the government, AFDC getting the fathers out of the homes. We talked about in the olden days, or with our mothers and grandfathers, they understood that racism and discrimination was real because we dealt with it every day. So they understood some of the things that the African-American man or the male had to experience in his quest to be a provider for his family. And prior to, us jumping in here, Kirk, and I letting you comment, I want to make this statement. To think that a man doesn't want to provide for his family, to think that a man doesn't want to go out and work and earn to take care of his kids is a bunch of BS. Now, some that are just foul, but that runs the gamut with everybody. So we have to stop with these lies and with these facades to think that that people that look like us don't want to provide, right? We have to look at the reasons why they're not able to provide. Now, some of the reasons fall on us, most of the reasons don't. And we'll talk about that later. But Kirk, I want to give you an opportunity to elaborate on some of the things I brought up on the last segment. Once you get done, we're going to dive right into this concept that I'm hearing from my kids, and you may be hearing from your nieces and nephews, that racism doesn't exist anymore. We're going to talk about that.
Well, what's going on is you're having this younger generation, right? And what they're seeing, Sedrick, is the killing. They're still killing. So they're feeling that the racism isn't their biggest problem. They're seeing this killing, and they're seeing their own race killing. So they're looking at this like this isn't nothing racial. It's hate. It is hate. It is image that people are living for, Sedrick. People want this image now. And it runs so rampantly, so far deep with the image. People want to be feared. People want to be looked at as, it's about trying to put fear in people. Mm-hmm. But what they don't understand is that these fear tactics that you're bringing out here, and you're having to prove these points, and you're ending up killing somebody, you're losing all of the opportunity to come back when you're thinking as a mature adult. Because a lot of that is childish things. A lot of those things. And, because I've traveled so much, Sedrick, when you go different places, you have everywhere has their own little culture. It's just different. But one thing that does not erase anywhere that I go, me being Black, and that there's racism everywhere. I don't care what level, the book, the Obama book. I mean, he was the president. People don't understand the magnitude of what he went through.
I know, I agree totally.
You see, but one thing I can remember visiting in Greenville when Jerry Rice and Jackie, which is my aunt's husband's niece, was married to Jerry Rice. And I remember talking with him, and one thing he told me, you talking about a Hall of Fame wide receiver. I can remember him telling me, Curt, no matter where you go, you are still a nigger in certain people's eyes, no matter what you do, no matter your accomplishments. And I'm saying it like that because it was given to me like that at 17, 18 years old. And I could revert back to the picture where I wore a Super Bowl ring one of the times when we went there. So, again, this show is real talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but that just let me know, you will most definitely have to deal with that, but it's up to us to kind of unify a little more. It's up to us to stop glorifying the wrong things. And it's just getting bad, Sedrick, because a lot of the mothers are dragging the guys, and it's just so much disconnect because some of these men, like, man, I done been married twice, man, I lost 2 homes I had, and they having to start over and they tired, man. They are these guys. Like, man, I'm not, it has literally messed up some of these people. And I hate to see that. I'm just glad I was kind of smart with some of the things that I've came in contact and used more of my intuition to make judgments. But that is one of the main things that is going on. And, it just takes that part where I said earlier, it takes more of genuine people like us to kind of grasp a little, and hopefully they can reach some of the people that we can't reach, because some of them won't respect us, Sedrick. I don't care what we did. It's not going to.
Totally.
Yeah.
And Curt, real quickly, elaborate a little bit on, when we talked about the disrespect in some of our households or the female-led households. On a different show, I talked about the effects of women raising men, right? And how that's being reflected out in the community. I talked about a little bit on the other segment on the government and the mandates that the government's put down to affect our families, but also with the pushing back of Black men or the feminization of Black men and pushing Black women forward. So I want to hear your commentary on that a little bit. And again, let's relate that back to Black Lives Matter.
Exactly. Well, what has happened, Sedrick? See, you have these women, okay, that gets together and you're getting these outside talks. So they're talking to each other. Girl, don't let him treat you like this. You see my man over here, right here. He do what I say when I say it, because they're mimicking this man as being a good man. But to real men, we looking at him like, bro, you're not a man. You won't even stand up for yourself. Right. So they're taking these roles. And now these women are sticking their chests out like men.
They got something hanging between their legs.
Okay, now you see where I'm going with this. So now they feel that, hey, if you ain't getting on board, they go to control part, because they want control. They want to be able to, do these type of things. So once they begin to treat these guys like this, and you have these young men seeing this, how are they going to respect it? How? Instead of, regardless, you being a real man, I don't care if you got 2 cents in your pocket. You're a man before you work at a job, before you're a father, before you're a wife, before you're a husband, before you anything dealing with man things, you're a man first. And until they get to that part to say, hey, I'm going to be a man first, then that's where those households will start changing, because it's a bunch of lonely women out there, Seth, because they want things how they want it. They got a little money in their pocket, and they got their little friends that tells them this, that. They got all these outside entities. Then they got 2 or 3 of them that got their men in dresses, and they think that's cool.
Right.
I don't wear a dress.
Never wear a dress.
There you go. So this is where these problems are coming in. Because if a young man sees a woman disrespecting the man, or they see where the man is being handled, how can he respect that?
Right. And then look at the music. Look at the music, Curt, right? They're being taught how to be men from the music. So how do you become a respected man? By being a killer? Oh, I'm gonna kill you. Do something to me, I'm gonna blast you on the street. You say something crazy to me, I'm gonna meet you at your house. I'm gonna see you in traffic, right? So now you're creating a situation where, you know, we're back to the jungle, right? Let's keep it real. It's lions, tigers, and bears, right? I'm a lion. There's no way I'm laying down, right? Let's keep it real. So we got other lions out here. So you know what happens when lions meet up? Somebody got to go. So elaborate on that a little bit for me, if you don't mind.
Well, what the thing is this. That's the mentality. But what they have to really understand, Sedrick, we're not lions. We can think. So now, okay, the difference of it is, okay, we can have a conversation. Two lions can't talk to each other, but we can talk to each other to say, hey, man, listen, bro, like, hey, where we're going with this, bro, you're a man and I'm a man. So we already know the end result if this go too far. Mm-hmm. We need to be able to have a sit down and let's talk on a very mature, very, very important thing that we need right now. Mm-hmm. Because the more we keep killing each other, the weaker we get. The weaker we are in numbers. Right. The more of us are locked up. Now you're ended up doing all this time coming out and not a woman gonna handle you just like it's handled in prison, you know, as a number. So as men, we have to not say, hey, we can think in line aspects, but we can't really act like the line. We have to understand, just because in us knowing that, you know, we are, you know, lions in thought process, but we have to understand we're not lions. And because lions, we're kings. And you have to be able to strategize life now. I love chess because you have to have a strategy going into chess. You can't just go and make moves because you have to put thought into it.
Because there's a consequence to each move.
Exactly. That's right. You know, because one wrong move and game over. And it's just, that's what it is in life.
Well, we're going to pick this up on the last segment. Guys, we'll be right back on The Conversation Shop. Hi, guys. Welcome back to The Conversation Shop. We are having a great conversation about what is Black Lives Matter. And we're talking about the Black community as a whole and a lot of the issues and circumstances that we have to navigate in order to truly breathe life into Black Lives Matter. Otherwise, it's just a word, it's just a phrase, it's political, and it has no meat and potatoes behind it, right? Black Lives Matter can't only matter when police kill us. It has to matter when we are out here killing ourselves, and we have to demand that it stops. As far as I'm concerned, it has to start with the music, right? Some of the messages that we're hearing. And we had to hold, quite frankly, I was one of the old school hip hoppers who said, oh, man, I don't care what you say. Everybody's smart enough to know this is entertainment. Well, everybody isn't smart enough to know that it's entertainment and they think it's real. You know, so what the music tells us is Black lives don't matter. What the music tells us is young Black women, don't be ladies, be strippers. Because, you know, back in my day, what they wear out to the clubs, they're stripper clothes. You know, every time you look at a picture that a female's taking, she got her butt out, bouncing, doing twerking. I saw twerking in a strip club, so now everybody want to be strippers, right? So I told one lady, you want me to throw dollars at you? I got some dollars. I'm gonna throw dollars at you. If I'm gonna mess with a stripper, I'm gonna go to the strip club. You know, so you have that stripper mentality, right? Think about that, what I'm saying. You have that mentality. And no knock, I'm not saying this process and encompasses all women, because we know amazing women, empowered, beautiful Black women who represent themselves and see themselves as queens, the queens that they are. When you hear me speak to people that look like me and other men that don't look like me. I breathe life into them. We are kings. I address you as young king, as a king. I do that purposely. I do that purposefully to breathe life into them, to teach them how to be kings and represent themselves in a positive way. And as you said earlier on in the show, we got to think, right? To use your minds. But remember, the thinking ones aren't celebrated anymore. You hear it in the music. Oh, he went to every class, passed every test. Like that's something where you should be ashamed of, right? So ignorance in our community seems to be what's celebrated. Ignorance across the board. So if Black lives really do matter, we have to hold everybody accountable, including ourselves. Now, real quickly, I just want to touch. Matter of fact, let me let you comment on what I just said real quickly, and then we'll jump into the other topic, because I really want to get into addressing our kids thinking that racism doesn't exist. But I'm gonna give you about 5 minutes to comment on that.
Yeah, well, like you said, the thinkers, well, what it is that when they make those type of statements, Sedrick, they're saying that the educated one that went to school isn't respected. But thinkers are in every aspect of any segment of life. In the streets, you got some people that are smart thinkers. I mean, in politics, you got some people that are thinkers. So the part of them saying they went to class and passed, it's people that will take that as that. But when I say thinkers, I'm talking about thinker in anything that you're doing. Yeah. Be a thinker. So if you're understanding that you're out here, shoot 'em up, bang, 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 if he can become a thinker to understand that this is not really getting me nowhere, that's where I want him at, to say, man, this really not getting nowhere. This is not really getting us nowhere. That's where the unification comes in. That all of that is going to line up like a puzzle, because just because you are a thinker does not mean that you are a square. Yeah, right. You get where I'm going with that? Yeah. So that's the part where I stress more of the thinking part on it, because you got some people out there that's doing all type of stuff that I'm just hoping they can start thinking to understand that where it's going to take them to.
How did you become a thinker? What made Curt the man that he is and the thinking man that he is? If you don't mind sharing that with my audience.
Well, the thing about it, say, challenges in life, obstacles, all of these certain things that start coming in front of me, and more than anything, putting God first to give me that vision and that intuition to start seeing things that I couldn't see at first. Because when I was younger, I wasn't more in tune with that intuition. Man, your intuition is very, very, very important, man. Because when you miss those things, those are a lot of times him talking to you. And when you're not in tune with it, you don't know that. So I started becoming more aware, because I make a decision, but I go back and be like, man, I got this sign, or I got this little intuition about this thing, and this ended up being the result. But I got it early on, but I missed it. We're not perfect, Sedrick. So that's the thing, that once you start to understand your flaws, your mistakes, and you really embrace them, that's when you start growing and becoming better. Anybody who knows it all, get away from it.
Oh, I have to add to that, because my favorite saying is, the person who thinks he knows, the person in the room that thinks he knows everything is usually the dumbest person in the room, because we all continue to learn. We continue to learn until the day that we die. So when I hear someone talking and acting like they know everything, I'll start laughing, sit back, and just be quiet, because they sound what they say, the old Charlie Brown movie, womp, 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 womp. I'm swearing that's all I hear. And again, but you're talking about being humble. You're talking about knowing your value, number one, but you're also talking about being humble. And a lot of people equate humbleness with weakness. No, the strongest man in the room is usually the most humblest man in the room. And I celebrate you, Cuzzo. I celebrate you all the time for the man that I've watched you become, but the man that you've always been. There's some things that are just in your DNA. You come from good stock. You understand what I'm saying? So I salute you when it comes to that. But before we end, I really want to dive into the notion that these kids are thinking that, or saying that racism doesn't exist. I use my young son as an example. He says, Dad, why do you equate everything to black and white? I don't see that, right? And before I got upset about him, because I'm like, what, did I do something wrong? Am I missing, where did I fail my son? And I realized that in our quest, as we became adults, we wanted to protect our kids. We put our kids in good schools where they went to school with kids of all backgrounds, all races. He's spending the night at Billy and Todd's house, and Todd is spending the night at our homes. And, these kids are growing up in this melting pot that we, quite frankly, didn't grow up in. And exactly. The perceptions of the subtleness of racism and discrimination, has manifested because it's very subtle. It's not overt. And sometimes it is, but it's not as overt as it was when we were growing up. So I have to teach my son all the time. I said, I'm glad that I've taught you that the world is your oyster, right? I've told you that you can go out into the world and you can accomplish anything that you want, right? But there's a caveat to that. The caveat to that is there's a pit right in front of my door, and I call it navigating landmines. That's something that came from my mentor. He said in life, as professional black men on the street, whatever you want to call it, as people of color, we navigate landmines every day. We're dodging landmines, things to knock us back, things to harm us, subtle things to remind us who we are. It's 2021. The majority of the businesses that I walk in, the majority of the jobs that I interview for, talk to people about, I'm usually the only black person or the first black person in 2021 to walk through that door. And what our young people have forgotten about is preparing the way for others, right? Because I know if I represent myself well and I do a great job and I work hard, that's going to make it easier for someone else that looks like me to come through that door, right? To walk through and obtain the things that I've obtained and to exceed the things that I feel or think that I've accomplished. And, the master, the student becomes the master, right?
That's right.
So my goal is the student has to become the master. So I want to create a space where I'm doing that. But again, going back to my son, I really had to think about that. And I have another friend that has a show, and he tells me all the time, he's militant, Trump supporter, just really very blunt, and I respect his intelligence. But I had to realize he grew up in a time where, again, he didn't have the same experiences as you and I. So does that make him wrong? Does that make his views wrong? Quite frankly, I don't think so. It means that what I tell him all the time, you have to open your mind up to realize that your perspective isn't the only perspective.
Exactly.
Just like mine is. So when like you said, when we sit down at the round table, like King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, and we have these conversations and we get these think tanks and we get all of these different perspectives, there's knowledge and understanding that comes from that. So for me, that's me addressing or speaking to that issue of notion that racism doesn't exist. I'm going to leave the last part of the show for you to comment on that. And again, to leave my audience with some tools, to some resolution to that. Tell us how they can overcome some of these things. Leave them with some words of wisdom.
Well, the thing is that, for one, as you were speaking on, one thing I would say, Sedrick, every people's feelings, there is no right and wrong with your feelings. Mm-hmm. However, what you do want to embrace to the children is to not be ignorant, to not think that racism don't exists, to understand that when you're in certain situations, understand that you could be in danger. And that's the aspect where I go into, hey, look for the best, but plan for the worst. And in those aspects, that's kind of what you talked about, those landmines. You have to kind of dodge and maneuver because you have to be quick on your feet according to what area you're in, where is that, what's going on. So those type of things, you just want your son not to be oblivious that it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Just because you haven't experienced it, son, don't mean that it's not out there. Because in the wrong situation, if you don't know how to react, it could cause you your life.
Exactly.
It's shown every day. So that's the only thing that you are trying to show him. And that's the thing that I want to give to the audience is to understand just because they're not experiencing this, even with the women, just because you're experiencing being able to take care of your kids without a man, it doesn't mean that you don't need a man or you won't need one, because one day anything can happen and you need him there for who knows what. The finances, just because you're up on your feet today does not mean you will be tomorrow. Look at COVID. You don't know. So I'm hoping that COVID has, it most definitely has exposed a lot of relationships. Because they really understood that they cannot, we really didn't love each other. I mean, we was here for whatever. But those are the things that I'm hoping that the audience would grasp, to help their children, to help them, just to help 2021 be nothing like 2020, and that's my whole hope, is for that. So,
Preach you totally. And then last but not least, leave us with one word, one phrase on your thoughts of how all of this relates to Black Lives Matter.
The whole thing is pray and understand that God has to be first because he can foresee the future. No one else can.
Thank you. Well, guys, I want to thank you for joining us on the Conversation Shop. I've enjoyed my conversation with Curt Singleton in regards to what is Black Lives Matter, or what does it mean to you? Black Lives Matter to me means coming together, thinking, holding all of us accountable, pushing forward together as a single unit, but not at the expense of anyone else, not knocking down anyone else, but we have to clean our own house up first, right? We have to hold our own brothers and sisters and fathers accountable first before we can look out into the world and hold other people accountable, right? So as I look out and I see some people get angry or say, you don't care about yourselves, think about that. If it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, is a duck. I thank you and good night. Join us on the next Conversation Shop, where my very special guest will be Mr. Curt Singleton, entrepreneur, businessman. We will be discussing Black Lives Matter and what does that mean to you. Join us, won't you?